Hola. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And also, thank you everyone for still being here. We're aware this is the very last in-person event, so we appreciate a full house. So I'm here to introduce our three panel members. So with us today, we have three very different characters with similar backgrounds and yet very different experiences. First, I would like to introduce Cormac MACGABHNA. Cormac is Irish, but grew up speaking in his native tongue, English. We'll talk more about that later on as well. He completed his BA in International Modern Languages in German and Italian in Dublin, and before doing a master's in translation studies also in Dublin, in Irish and German. He also worked in Germany and Italy for a few years. He specializes in both legal and medical translation as well, has experience working as a freelance translator, and now also works for the Bundessprachenamt in Germany. And he is part of the Translator and Interpreter Association in Ireland. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're the only translator working from German into Irish?
Yeah, that was a request I got straight out of my master's in 2021. Where the association, at least at that point, did not have any German-Irish translators, and I was the only one registered at the time that did German-English, English-Irish, so the project was passed along to me with the hope that I could do directly German into Irish, so that's what we were talking about the other night, which goes to show the really small pool of Irish language translators that there are out there, and we'll probably get onto this a little bit later on as well, but almost how privileged the position I have in a very quickly changing market, that I can be so selective and so principled in what projects I take on. But yeah, that's what you're talking about, I think, there.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. We'll talk more about your specific work later on. With us today, we also have Caroline MÜLLER. Caroline has completed her BA in Translation Studies in Leipzig, and then followed by a master's also in Leipzig, the EMT Masters. She's also working at an IT company, ipoque, as a working student. And fun fact, she's also hosting their pub quiz. To complete her master's thesis, she is working on a very interesting survey, surveying alumni from translation studies between the year of 2014 and 2025. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on. But maybe you'd like to introduce yourself also and maybe highlight the connection you have to TEF as well.
Yes, hello everyone, lovely to be here. Actually, my history with TEF, if you want to call it like that, started in 2022. That's when I first participated as an EMT student at that time. So I got sent by my university. And I still vividly remember how impressed I was by all the speeches, all the people that I met, and the whole atmosphere. And that was for me a huge motivation boost to start looking for my first job, because I wanted to be part of this industry. And last year, I actually was a Blue Book trainee in the communication unit of TGT. And that is the unit that organizes this conference. And so my involvement was that I was a trainees coordinator, and I was responsible for all the trainees who volunteered to help during the conference. And it was amazing to work with all of the great people who make this forum, this conference work, and to see a bit behind the scenes. And being a speaker this year really feels like a full circle moment, because I can imagine that the younger people in the audience feel a bit like I felt when I first came here. You're probably quite impressed with everything you heard and saw, and hopefully also motivated and with a lot of, good vibes and faith in yourself and in your future. And I hope that with this conference we can also contribute. With our panel, we can contribute to that as well.
Yeah. Amazing. And then, last but not least, with us is also Afroditi GIOVANI, originally Greek. Also with a similar background, let's say, with an EMT in Strasbourg. And she has also worked at the European Institution in the Greek translation unit. But since then, she has moved on into a more NLP, so AI-related orientation, working as an AI project manager for Dataforce, working for the end-to-end data lifecycle LLMs, on model evaluation, model enhancement. So her projects cover data collections, expert review, adversarial testing, benchmarking. So yeah, maybe you would like to add to that as well.
Hello everyone, and I'm very happy to be here. I am an AI project manager of the more technical kind, so I consult clients as well onto how to conduct these evaluations. I'm involved in every step of the data lifecycle, from the consulting of pricing, sales. I run the projects, I deliver them, so I'm pretty involved end to end. I also code myself and ship code for these evaluations. So I come from a linguistics background, but during my PhD, I started doing more and more computational linguistics projects. I fell in love with the numbers aspect of it, and somehow I ended up in working for AI, and not linguistic AI so much anymore. Also computer vision and STEM, things like that.
So as you can see, we have three very different people here on stage working in very different areas. Just to add to that as well, yeah, as was mentioned earlier, I'm doing a PhD in machine translation at Ghent University. Before that, I did a master's in Cologne in specialized translation. I actually have a bachelor's in physics and sciences, so I am a very, yeah, black sheep. And I've also worked on data literacy projects, machine translation literacy projects, nowadays AI literacy projects. So that's kind of my role in this. We have different topics that we would like to cover today. So obviously this theme here being quality, we're going to start with that as sort of an overarching topic. And specifically how quality is relevant in each of your sort of works and expertises. So I would like to start with you, Afroditi. Maybe how was quality defined in your job? So what is the most specific aspect, qualitative aspect in your life?
So quality for me is a negotiation between what is ideal, what is possible, and what is profitable. So you need to be willing to sacrifice perhaps on one of these dimensions, taking into consideration the risk involved. So it's very important to be transparent with every stakeholder involved, understand very well what you can do, what you cannot do, and let the decision makers make their decisions.
What do you have to sacrifice most frequently, if you talk about that regarding quality?
This is not a decision that I make, it's the client to make. My job is to make the client understand what can be done.
Cormac, you also work a lot with clients on a freelance basis. So of course you're also now employed at the Bundessprachenamt, but you have a lot of experience working with freelance clients. What have you experienced there, the most important qualitative aspect to be, and what do they appreciate then about the quality of your work, because they keep coming back? So,
yeah, I think accuracy has to be still the focal point of, certainly in my narrow worldview of translation. It's accuracy. Is the terminology used between two languages accurate, and do they match up? Is the target text syntactically correct? Is the orthography correct? Does the tone of voice or the style of the target text match that of the source text? Because that might give some, sort of freedom or a level of interpretation when you're translating. And does then that target text have the same impact on a reader as the source text did? And is the target reader understanding the same thing in the same way that a reader in the source language is taking that text. So that when I produce a text that, you know, sort of ticks all those boxes, that is what I would call a high quality text. But as Afroditi said, that's not always what clients want, unfortunately. Well, depends on what way you look at it, unfortunately or fortunately. But I think it's a shame that that's not always what clients want. Sometimes clients do want, you know, texts that are just translated by machines in a quick and nasty way, but it's extremely cheap and it's extremely easy. Sometimes that is what the client wants. Sometimes the client wants maybe someone like me to throw an eye over a machine translated text so it's slightly more readable. I try to avoid those because I put a huge value on what I call a qualitative text. And because I'm in a position where I can be selective about the projects I take on and the clients that I work with, yeah, I tend to stick with those where my vision of what quality is coming to the fore.
And do you feel that you can also always deliver that you have the time to do so, the resources to do so?
Yeah, it's like you're going to hear it more often. I am in a privileged position where my freelance work, I'm not 100% financially dependent on it. It is done in my free time, so I can negotiate with clients my price, my deadlines, and if a client says, no, sorry, that doesn't work for us, I can say, well, then this project isn't for me, and just not take the project. A lot of translators don't have that luxury, and I'm aware of that. But I can wait around for projects where I do have the time, and I am getting compensated in a way for what I believe is quality. And if and when I find the clients that will give me that compensation and time for it, yes, I can deliver it every time.
And for Afroditi, how is that for you? Do you feel like you always have enough time and all the possibilities to really achieve everything that the client asks, or are you also very pressed for time, or can you always deliver what they ask, no matter what that is that they want to focus on? Or
Yeah, you have to, because you need to prep. So you need to have your plan, you need to have everything. Before a project starts, you need to know, you need to visualize it completely. If not, there's something that either you're not being communicated or you're not communicating. What I wanted to say is that with low resource data, such as rare combination, it's fundamental that the people that are working in creating this, it doesn't matter if it's a bilingual aligned text or whatever, it's important to have good quality because we don't have much to work with, which makes it immediately eligible for ground truth data sets. And we need maximum quality, so you're doing good work there, not only for your industry, but also for mine.
also for feeding the LLMs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe to the detriment of mine.
Yeah. So there is a distinction between what we call the system of records and the ground truth. So system of records can be in a company, whatever texts they have. We cannot use that to train an LLM. We need to curate it. So that's what I mean. Like when you don't have a lot in a combination, it immediately goes from system of records to ground truth because we don't have anything else, right? So it's fundamental to have a good quality for rare types of data.
You want to add to that, or?
What can I add to that? I don't like the advent of AI in translation, and I avoid it in as much as I can. And again, because of my privileged position, I can avoid it quite successfully. Thank you. I attended, as part of my CPD last year, I attended, around this time last year, I think, a seminar called Translation in Digital Spaces, which focused a lot on AI translation and how damaging it was. But it was sort of done through the lens of, you know, who does AI benefit to whose detriment is it used, and at what cost is it used. And when I look at AI in translation through that lens, it goes against an awful lot of what I try to stand for as a person. Forget professionally as well. I mean, in my personal life, as a left-leaning person, I don't like that, you know, CEOs of LSPs are able to pad their bottom lines a little bit better because they're cutting costs and paying their translators less. I don't like that quality is not, or my vision of quality is not coming to the fore because the output from AI is not as high a standard as what I believe a human can produce. If you look at who it harms me as a translator because, and I don't know who started or where it started, this idea that we have to include AI in translation. I mean, the humans were here first and we can do translation perfectly well. Who decided that we have to let AI into everything we do? But it is to our detriment. It is to any number of actors outside the translation industry's detriment, from students to even women, when you look at the fact that, you know, most voices that are put into these data sets are coming from areas where it's so, I think I saw some study there the other day, that it's weird, the Western industrialized rich countries, these voices that are being put into this data sets is not representative of everyone. And yeah, so for all these reasons, I do not like AI and I avoid it when I can.
Yeah. Well, AI is not just, again, it's not just linguistic AI. It's transforming the lives of so many people. For example, you can have blind people that can really exist better in their environment. So many things, like it is discovering new proteins, like doing very good medical research. Now, within this context of linguistic AI, you are completely right. But these are governance questions that are perhaps not, we don't have enough time in this panel, right, to discuss. What I wanted to say is that for me as a linguist, going into AI, I saw, apart from translation, other ways that I can use my linguistic knowledge. For example, for voice assistants, we can really help create technology that can benefit so much the population, apart from translation, but still within language.
Yeah, and that's completely valid as well.
So on a slightly different note, you have experience in technical writing. How is that for you, and how does quality specifically play a role in that? What is the most qualitative important aspect to focus on in technical writing and in your experience?
Yeah, we do our documentation in English. So, I mean, it is kind of related to translation in a way as well. And I would say there are some similarities in terms of quality. You also have to check for accuracy, good terminology. I mean, you know, you have to use the same terminology again and again, obviously, and know it very well. And you have to know who will use the manual in the end, and who you're writing it for, because then you can know what information is needed and what might be redundant. And I'd like to quickly mention one thing that we did in the company I work in to raise the quality, which is that we implemented the so-called docs as code concept. I don't know if maybe some of you have heard of it. It basically consists of that you write your software documentation the same way as you do write the code for the software. And that is actually a huge advantage because you can write it in the same program, so you don't need several tools, basically. You're closer to the software developers, and so it helps to work better together, and that all makes the whole process faster.
So moving on to the next sort of overarching topic, we also have a Slido question as well. Exactly. So still sticking to the topic of quality and your specific work, how does Gen AI affect the quality of your work? So either it decreases quality, improves quality, or it has no impact on quality. And while we're still waiting for sort of some results to come in, this is kind of so leading on to what we were just talking about, but a bit more sort of specifically, we would like to talk about the industry that it is today, and also the human added value, which of course we've already talked a lot about the last few days, so this is not, we're trying to look at it from your specific workflows and your specific experiences. So for example, Afroditi, in your field, where can you rely on AI to deliver quality or a qualitative output, and where do you still rely on that human quality?
In a QA workflow, AI, when you scale, AI can fill the gap of needing many people doing the job fast and at many different knowledge levels. So if I am doing, let's say, a data set of PhD physics problems, I cannot find one specialist. I mean, it needs to be a senior academic to review this PhD problem, but I can have a specialized AI model that does that. So that makes me, I can do my job faster like this. Ideally, you put a subject matter expert there, which is a human person, but sometimes they're impossible to find because I need them now. Because business is business. So that's it.
Yeah, so if you don't have that time or you don't find the subject expert now, then you revert back to...
Yeah, I need to do it somehow because the client needs to move on, right, with what they need to do. I'm going to find like the best fit model for what I need to do, and I'm going to run it like that. In general, AI solves you the scaling problems.
So here we're talking about scaling, about time, time-critical tasks. We're back at the good enough as well that we've talked about the last few days. How about you, Cormac? So in your aspects of work, and that might be different aspects as well, because you have the work for the Bundessprachenamt, which might be still, even though it's all translation, it might still be different to your freelance work. But where do you, if at all, rely on AI quality? And where do you rely on your own human quality?
No, not at all. I have been lucky, and I admit that I've been lucky. Before I moved to the Bundessprachenamt, I was working with an LSP in Bremen that specialized in medical content, and my team leaders had done a very good job of stemming pressure to allow AI and NMT, the wrong language, into our work flows, so that we still had human translators, human proofreaders, human DDP specialists, and human project managers. Our entire workflow was done with only human output. And I was very lucky to work there for 4 years. In the Bundessprachenamt, I am aware, or have recently been made aware on a training course just this week, that AI does exist in some levels of the Bundessprachenamt, but not at my level and not for anyone working in the in my team, let's say, or in my entire department or side of the Bundessprachenamt. I'm not sure what level AI does become available for your workflows, but certainly not mine. And then in my freelance world, it's completely my own choice to leave it out. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, or in my experience as well, because I have taken projects evaluating AI output in Irish, for which I was fairly compensated for, which is why I took the projects to begin with. I've received projects from LSPs asking me to post-edit machine translations into Irish. And actually, I had, this is perhaps where I had a turning point on my views on machine translation and AI output in Irish. I received a project for post-editing into Irish. It was small enough, I think, maybe around 10 pages, reviewing a legal-ish document for a large international company. And they wanted me to post-edit it and have it back in 2 days or something like that. I said, yes, okay. I received the document in question and had a look at the Irish output, and it was just not fit for purpose. So I took specific examples from that, went back to the company and said, hey, look, this is not equitable for me at the price that we've agreed. It's not doable in the time frame you've agreed with the amount of work that I have to put into this now. We're going to have to relook at this. And they asked me what I would need or want to complete the project. And I gave them that, and that wasn't doable for them. So it was at that point that I said, okay, no more AI or no more machine translation for me. And that sorry, not no more machine translation, no more pure machine translation. I still receive from clients perhaps machine translations which are left there as a reference, and I can access through concordance searches and things like that, but certainly no reliance on AI in that aspect of it.
Do you see any differences there? Because, I mean, working with English and German, for example, as two languages, or English and Irish, or German and Irish are going to be quite the difference as well,
yeah,
regarding like machine translation.
Yeah, and it's like you said, because the data sets probably for Irish are so much smaller than perhaps English, where 50% of the internet is in English. The quality level difference there is going to be ginormous. But even I know when I was working in Bremen, we had a project into Spanish, which I would imagine is also a language where there is huge amounts of input into it. And we were translating a very large document across all European languages for a medical device that was its intended use was for the female anatomy. And when we looked at the machine output for Spanish, it had not recognized that the patient in question was female, and had translated the entire documents as if this device was intended for a male project. So even when it's not Irish, even when you're looking at the larger languages where the data sets for them are better, you're still running into fundamental problems as far as a translator is concerned, and the quality, and my definition of quality, is simply not good enough.
Yeah. Maybe coming back to the point, Afroditi, that you were mentioning, that in some, like, you work a lot with AI, you rely a lot on that as well for many different reasons. It's also the focus of your work. But sometimes you say it would be good to have that human expert, but you don't really find these people in such a short moment of time. Do you have any ideas on maybe how that could be improved? If that is the wish, maybe that is not the wish to work in that direction, but if that would be sort of a good outcome, how could that be done any better?
Again, the client comes to you with a sort of, because sometimes the part of the part of the company that you are discussing with in your negotiations is not the scientist, it's someone from business. So I'm delivering a data set, and I'm having a conversation with someone who doesn't really know the science, doesn't really know the numbers, doesn't understand a lot, but they have a very good idea, which they passed by their boss, they got funding for it, and now they come to materialize it. So it's not that, it's more complicated than that. Depending on which stakeholder you're talking to, not everyone cares about the same things. So they want it fast, they want it good enough, as it has been said many times, and they define what is good enough because they are a company. So they define their own KPIs.
So I think we see differences, very much differences in the fields, in the topics that you work on, and whether you work with a company where there's maybe not that one specific person that's doing it. Like in your case, it is you can stand up for yourself, you can say no. So we see quite some differences there. I also think this result is really interesting. This is probably also due to the fact that it's a very different workflows that people are voting on here, very different languages. It is very interesting to see that clearly AI is not solving or just improving. It can be that tool to help you if you want it, at least for translation or translated related work. So now we would like to move on to the next kind of overarching topic, and that is a bit training. So your training, the training you've had as translators or language specialists, and also especially Caroline's survey results, which will be really interesting. And to start off, I would also like to have the next Slido question, please. But yeah, so in this question, in this field, we're going to reflect on translator training in general, and maybe also how curricula could be adapted, maybe what people have been missing. So in this question, did your training adequately prepare you for today's field in translation? So either mostly yes, but it missed specific courses, and these courses could be anything ranging from technology courses, terminology specific courses as well, management courses maybe. We've been talking about simulating LSPs, or was your training not enough? You felt that you lacked necessary skills, or did you feel that you were prepared very adequately? And this is already a very interesting result, which we'll focus a bit as well on. And maybe Caroline can start off talking a bit about your survey, what exactly you did, and like sort of the most interesting results that you found out based on that.
Yes, sure. So you already mentioned I did a survey with the graduates from our institute in Leipzig, asked them many questions, and it was basically about 3 main topics. The first one was to find out a bit how their studies looked like, what they did during that time. Then I asked them questions about their professional lives, and there was also a special section for people who work in the translation industry. And then in the last part, they were asked to evaluate their studies. In the first part, which was about how did your studies look like, I could already feel like there were many different paths, many different decisions that were taken. And so the common thread is that there is not really a common thread, except for that most people study English. That's not really a big surprise, but yeah, it really depends on the individual, whether they worked during their studies or not, or they did an internship or not, or went abroad. And so, yeah, there are many individual stories, so I would rather focus on the part about the professional life of the graduates. And I'd like to start with something positive, which is that 93% of the graduates are employed. And only 2% are actually unemployed. The rest, the remaining 5%, are doing further training or on maternity leave. So I would say this is already a really positive result. And then the transition time between studies and starting to work was also really impressive, because 50% said that it took them basically 0 months. So they started working right after their studies, which is super quick. And then another 25% said they found a job within the first 3 months after their studies. So that is really nice. And then when it came to what the people actually do right now, 70% said that they are working in the language industry. And when it came to the question, do you work in the translation field, it was actually 50-50. So then the people were asked to say, did you work in the translation field maybe before but change? And 54% said yes. And when they were asked about the reason, what I found quite astonishing was that the smallest reason was basically because they were made redundant. And the main reasons were because they found jobs with higher salary or better chances for career growth, because they were not appreciated enough. Yeah, or they didn't like how the work evolved in the past years. And I think this is a bit sad, because it shows that people don't leave because they have to, what I think many people are afraid of, but actually because they want to. rather work somewhere else, and I think that's something that we can work on to improve these issues, because it is extremely important for people to feel appreciated, and that can be done through several things, you know, through money, but also that you are visible in the company where you work in, and that people know what you're actually doing, that you're part of the team. And I'm quite lucky because in the company where I work, our work is definitely appreciated, but I think visibility is extremely important, and that people know that our work is valuable.
Which is very great to hear that, at least in that case, it's a given. I can imagine in a way that links, because on the one hand it sounds like no, AI is not taking away your jobs because they were not being fired, but on the other hand it is changing their jobs a lot. So basically, if you're maybe not agile enough, which is something we were talking about the last few days, or if you maybe don't like working with MT or don't like post-editing as well, or maybe other things that are being changed in the company because there have been all these changes in the last few years, maybe that's affecting the people most, and also the fact of not being appreciated, that the human maybe or your expertise is not being appreciated enough because now also there is AI. Potentially there's a link between that as well, which is very sad to hear, that people are leaving not because they're being fired, but because they're not being appreciated. Regarding curricula and like training, maybe also a comment from you as well, Cormac. Interesting that, well, your focus is translation, but now you're also studying something else to add to that.
Yeah, I suppose more to insulate myself from the slew that is AI coming on. I've been trying to specialize in law, so I've 2 years ago completed an advanced diploma in Irish legal translation, and currently still completing a diploma in legal studies offered by the King's Inns in Dublin. But as far as my education in translation goes, and I might have to be careful considering the head of my course is sitting over to my left and I'm meeting him for the first time today. No, it was the program I did was part of the EMT network in Dublin City University, and it was a great course. It was, having studied languages, it felt like the perfect springboard to go further into the profession of translation. I think I decided to go into translation from a quite early age. It was more so a matter of when, and 2020 sort of forced my hand a bit and pushed me into it a bit quicker than I had intended. But at least at that time, I suppose if you were to maybe look at how you could change that course for today, you would have to put in some note on AI. It's not something that we had in my time 5 years ago.
So the average of the people on stage here is between 27 and 33 years. Just a little note as well on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're pushed for time a little bit. So this is still a very interesting result, which I think there is a lot of changes in curricula. Sometimes it also just takes a long time to change a curricula at a university in general, but it shows that there is progress. There is still something that needs to be, changed and worked on, potentially to adapt these curricula. One last Slido question, and maybe one line from each of you before we go on to Q&A. What would your advice be to maybe people, entering the field? Maybe we can start with you.
Enter with a building mindset. Like, don't be scared to go out there and build. If you are a freelancer, think of yourself as a business and expand this business. If you are in project management, program management, build better workflows. Push yourself always, because now we have more technology than ever to help us be more number savvy, even if we don't come from this background. So I say seize the moment, what it has to give you.
Yeah, so open-minded and agile as well, as we heard the last days. Cormac?
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that, and maybe add that to not be afraid of all the noise that surrounds the industry. And if you have a certain idea of translation in your mind, that idea, there is a job out there for that idea somewhere, if you can stick around long enough to find it. So to ignore all the noise around the industry that you might be put off by.
Yeah, Caroline?
I would say quite a general advice, but try to make as many experiences and contacts as possible already during your studies, and even if you don't feel ready for it, because I also didn't feel ready today to speak here on the stage, and here I am. And yeah, have faith in yourself and trust in your talents, but also stay open to find out what else there might be in your toolbox, because I think that is a lifelong process, and that can also lead you to your specialization, for instance.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think also the answer to this poll is quite hopeful, that most people think they will still be working, hopefully or definitely, in the translation industry. I think it's time for a Q&A as well. Are there any questions in the audience? Yes.
First, yeah, thank you very much for a very inspiring discussion. We really need these fresh discussions at TEF. Yes, and my question is very provocative. If you had power to change just one aspect on how our industry works today, what would that be? What would be on the first slide?
Does anyone want to answer that?
Perhaps remuneration. Translators are not well paid, but we're highly specialized people with lots of experience and a high level of education, but that is not appreciated by a lot of the larger players out there. And I think a lot of people leave the industry, like we just saw, because they are undervalued or feel undervalued, even if it's not there. So perhaps, I don't know if it's something we could regulate in the future, or if there are movements that we could bring more to the fore of the industry, but I do think that proper and equitable payment for translators and freelance translators as well is something that needs to be addressed.
Sorry to say, but this is where we leave it. It's time. We could go on for the whole day, for the whole week even, but thank you ever so much for this last closing panel.